On the evening of August the 18th of 2024, residents of a Kinser Flats apartment complex in Monroe County, Indiana, alerted the authorities after they heard screaming in the building. Law enforcement located the apartment from which the commotion had been coming and broke down the door. Music was blaring inside, and officers found 25-year-old Briley Turner lying on a couch covered in blood. The woman exhibited no injuries and told one of the cops, "I had to defend myself, dude." On the bathroom floor, the police found 36-year-old Michael Ray Hodge, who was bleeding profusely after he'd been bludgeoned and stabbed multiple times. He exhibited numerous injuries to his legs, rib cage, chest, and neck. Turner displayed erratic behavior during her interactions with law enforcement, as she was repeatedly making jerking motions with her extremities and loud moaning and whimpering noises. The woman had a history of methamphetamine use and had been jailed for possession of the drug in 2022. She claimed that Hodge had tried to get her by holding her down and putting stuff down her throat. After examining the scene, the police concluded that Hodge had been struck at least twice with a baseball bat before he was stabbed with a knife and a tire plug tool that had a metal spike on it. Hodge was rushed to a hospital. He was able to tell the police that Turner had attacked him as they were about to get into the shower together. He revealed that they hadn't been arguing prior to the attack and that it occurred without any provocation whatsoever. The evidence pointed to his version of events as the most probable, and Turner was arrested for aggravated assault and attempted murder. Her charges were upgraded to murder after Hodge succumbed to his injuries in September. Turner's pre-trial hearing was scheduled for October of 2024. Number 7. Rodney Canterbury. In June of 2015, Alabama woman Jana Nicole Freese arranged to meet her ex-boyfriend, 42-year-old Rodney Canterbury, in Hayden, Alabama. They'd been talking on Facebook, and Freese agreed to have intercourse with the man in exchange for money. They met at a grocery store, and Canterbury followed Freese's vehicle in his Jeep as she led him to a nearby field. Since their breakup, Freese had been seeing 39-year-old Patrick Wayne Logan. The couple were experiencing financial difficulties and hatched a plan to rob Canterbury. 32-year-old Freese lured him to the secluded area with the promise of intercourse. She and Logan prearranged that he would mark the ambush spot with an orange flip-flop. When Freese and Canterbury arrived, Logan emerged from the woods and fatally shot the other man, once in the head and once in the abdomen. The couple fled empty-handed, as the $3,000 that the victim had brought with him were in a locked glove box in his Jeep. A man who lived in the area found Canterbury's dead body next to his vehicle the following day. Later in June, local law enforcement received a call from a man who lived in the same Mount Olive house as Freese and Logan. He reported that the night before Canterbury's body was found, the couple had come in late and that Logan had asked him to clean a gun, which was covered in dirt and appeared to have been buried. Officers got a warrant to search the house and retrieved a .38 caliber Taurus pistol from a safe. It proved to be a match for the weapon that had been used to kill Canterbury. The couple were arrested, but Logan denied any knowledge of the incident. Freese initially did the same, but when pressed further, admitted to the honey trap plot. She admitted murder under a plea deal which involved her testifying against Logan and serving 5 years of a 20-year sentence. Logan was convicted of capital murder and was sentenced to life without parole in September of 2018. Number 6. Eric Steltzer. 2 days after Christmas in 2018, police in Cohasset, Massachusetts, were asked to perform a wellness check at the home of Eric Steltzer. He was a 6'6" bodybuilder who would often upload videos of his workouts on YouTube. His mother knew that he was suffering from mental health challenges, and a neighbor had called her to report that loud crashing noises were coming from the house. 2 officers went to the address and knocked on the door but received no answer. They eased open an unlocked sliding door and called out for Steltzer, but they heard a woman cry out, "Help me, he's killing me." The officers rushed to an upstairs bedroom and kicked down the door. They found Steltzer on the floor as he was holding a severely battered woman in a headlock and pressing a glass shard to her neck. They were both naked and covered in blood. The victim was 24-year-old Megan Tapley, whom Steltzer had met on Tinder and invited to his home. At some point during their intimate encounter, the bodybuilder suffered delusions that she was the devil and that she'd killed his mother and sister. He then attacked her with extreme brutality. Steltzer struck Tapley in the face until her bones shattered, gouged her eye, tried to plunge a wooden spike in her stomach, and repeatedly stabbed her with a knife and shards of glass. She was barely conscious when the police came upon the horrific scene. Unable to see through the blood in her eyes, Tapley heard officers telling her to crawl to them, and she was able to break free from Steltzer. Officers kept their weapons aimed at the bodybuilder, who began screaming, "I am God!" Both officers shot him with their tasers and shocked him multiple times. The muscle-bound man was left writhing on the floor, desperately trying to dislodge the taser darts from his body. Steltzer became unresponsive shortly thereafter. An ambulance was called, but he stopped breathing en route to the hospital and was subsequently pronounced dead. The cause listed by the medical examiner's office was a combination of a heart problem, the altercation, taser shocks, and amphetamine. The bodybuilder's family had been desperately trying to get him help for his mental health struggles and had planned a meeting with an intervention specialist. Steltzer abused alcohol, marijuana, and Adderall, in addition to injecting himself with testosterone and steroids. 2 days before his death, he'd experienced a crisis and ranted about good and evil during a family Christmas gathering. He refused treatment when his sister called him an ambulance. Tapley, who initially risked losing an eye as a result of the attack, recovered following a lengthy process that involved her undergoing surgeries to reconstruct her face. Number 5. Danny Fraser. 21-year-old Florida man Danny Fraser didn't return home after leaving his workplace at a Publix supermarket warehouse on November the 4th of 2020. His mother reported him missing to Polk County authorities. On November the 10th, a work crew found Fraser's battered body under a pile of debris in Lake Wells. Acting on a tip, the authorities arrested brothers Hangel and Joe Lobato, aged 18 and 19 respectively. It would emerge that they'd been planning to murder Fraser for several weeks and that they'd lured him with the promise of Joe having intimate relations with him. On November the 4th, Fraser picked up Joe in his car in downtown Central Park in Winter Haven and drove him to Lake Howard. Hangel was armed with a baseball bat and waiting to ambush him at the meetup spot while Joe was secretly carrying a knife. The brothers attacked Fraser and he tried to fight back, but they overpowered him, fatally stabbing him and striking him with the bat. Before the body was discovered, the Lobatos attempted to use Fraser's credit cards. On November the 6th, they were also caught by law enforcement driving his Chevy Impala. Joe fled on foot, leaving behind Angel in the passenger seat. He claimed that he didn't know who owned the Impala. The authorities seized the vehicle, but they had no probable cause to arrest him at the time. After the murder plot came to light and the Lobatos were arrested, Sheriff Grady Judd described them as pure evil in the flesh during a press conference. The sheriff told the media that they proudly confessed and bragged about the murder during questioning, saying that it earned them their stripes and enhanced their street cred. Judd went on to say neither one of them had any previous criminal record, and that was a shock to us as well. How do you get so mean and so evil and have so much hatred? The Lobatos were each charged with first-degree murder and 8 other criminal counts, including conspiracy, robbery with a firearm, grand theft, accessory after the fact, and tampering with evidence. The legal proceedings into their case were ongoing as of the latest updates. Number 4. Alex Rodder. For several months leading up to the late fall of 2019, English teenager Alex Rodder had been intimately involved with 18-year-old Matthew Mason. The relationship between the teens, both of whom lived in the Cheshire area, began to fall apart after Rodder learned that Mason had a girlfriend whom he'd been dating for 2 years. In November, Rodda messaged the girl on social media to reveal that Mason had been flirting with him and that he'd sent him explicit photos and videos. The 18-year-old denied the existence of a relationship to his girlfriend, but shortly thereafter started making payments to Rodda's bank account. The younger teen, who was not of the legal age for consent, had reportedly threatened Mason that he would go public with their tryst. Payments stopped. By November the 23rd, the money that Mason had sent him totaled £2,020. In mid-December, Mason asked Rodda to meet him to have intimate relations, and the latter agreed. The older teen picked him up from his home on December the 12th and drove him to a remote woodland area near the village of Ashley. At some point during the rendezvous, Mason, an apprentice mechanic, brandished a large wrench and began bludgeoning Rodda. He dealt 15 strikes, most of which were to the other teen's head. Rodda succumbed to massive head trauma shortly thereafter. In the aftermath, Mason went to a friend's farm, cleaned himself up, and then met friends at 2 pubs. He later returned to the crime scene and dragged Rodda's body to the side of the road in an attempt to place it in his Renault Clio. He was unable to do so and drove off, but a witness caught a photo of his vehicle parked on the track and alerted the authorities. After Rodda's half-naked body was found, Mason was arrested for murder. In court, it was argued that the teenage killer had groomed his victim before carefully planning and mercilessly executing his murder. In June of 2021, he was jailed for life with a minimum of 28 years behind bars. Number 3. Austine. Months after he'd moved from Ghana to Australia, 26-year-old Austine arranged to meet up with a trio of women to whom he'd been talking on Tinder. They got together in early May of 2017, and he agreed to drive them from Richmond to Sunshine in Melbourne. At some point during the trip, the women attacked Austine with a knife and demanded the keys to his Volkswagen. CCTV showed the assailants driving off in the vehicle. After they'd abandoned the injured Austine, he knocked on several residential doors trying to get help, before 2 passing women found him sitting in a prone position on the sidewalk. Harrowing cell phone footage showed Austine soaked in blood as he groaned in pain and muttered, "I'm dying." His knife wounds weren't deemed life-threatening, and he underwent surgery at Royal Melbourne Hospital. His attackers weren't identified and no arrests were reported in the immediate aftermath. Today's topic was requested by MVB88 and Nikki C8886. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Frankie Victor Prineus. After months of talking to a woman online, 27-year-old Australian man Frankie Victor Prineus went on a first date with her on January the 10th of 2020. Following a night out, they headed to her Charnwood house in Canberra's north to watch Netflix. The unnamed woman in question had previously dated 27-year-old Jason Anthony Newby. Following their breakup, Newby had reportedly become obsessed with her. He'd been out drinking with friends for most of January the 10th. At around 1 a.m. the following day, he abandoned his Honda Civic and took a taxi to his ex's home. Newby let himself inside and, upon hearing sounds coming from the bedroom, grabbed a 10-inch knife from the kitchen. He then made his way to the room, opened the door and turned on the light. He became enraged upon seeing Prineus naked in bed with his ex. Newby viciously attacked him with the knife, inflicting 37 separate wounds to his head, neck, chest, arms and to one of his legs. The woman screamed and pleaded for him to stop, but he said nothing throughout the brutal onslaught. Newby then dropped the knife and fled the scene. Prineus was bleeding profusely, and he survived long enough to tell his date that he couldn't breathe. An ambulance was called and he was rushed to Canberra Hospital, where he was pronounced dead about an hour after the attack that night. Newby went to his mother's house and confessed that he found some guy sleeping with his ex and that he got him with a knife. He subsequently surrendered to a Canberra police station. Newby pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to 20 years in prison with a minimum term of 10 years. The sentence left Prineas' family in total dismay as they felt it wasn't long enough. During the hearing, the judge concluded that Newby was motivated by anger and jealousy, describing the attack as an assertion of dominance and control. If you thought these chances to get lucky weren't ridiculous enough, just wait until you see how saying no can take a deadly turn. Stay tuned after number 1 for our previous release of when not taking no for an answer goes wrong, coming right up. Number 1. Dexter Davis. In September of 2023, Welsh teenager Dexter Davis made contact with a man in his 40s on the Grindr dating app. They met at the latter's home in Port Talbot, had relations and reportedly parted on good terms. A little over a week later, Davis used a different account to talk to the unnamed man who quickly figured out it was him behind the account. They agreed to see each other again. After returning to the address, Davis asked the man if he had handcuffs and a blindfold, telling him that he had something in mind. When his Grindr date told him that he didn't have the items, Davis pulled his t-shirt over his head and told him to lie on his stomach. The older man agreed, believing he was about to get a massage. The teen then discreetly brandished a knife and stabbed his date in the back over a dozen times. When the victim turned around, Davis knifed him in the face, slashing his cheek. He then fled the home into a neighbor's garden where he discarded the knife. Before leaving the scene, Davis told the neighbor that a man pretending to be a woman online had lured him to the home and tried to stab him. The victim sustained injuries across his back and shoulders, with one knife strike narrowly missing his spine, but subsequently recovered. Investigators retrieved the knife and they were able to connect it to the teen, who was subsequently arrested. Davis offered no insight into his motivation for the attack, as he repeatedly answered no comment during police questioning. He admitted inflicting grievous bodily harm with intent, and in April of 2024 was jailed for 3.5 years. In late August of 2023, following a months-long investigation, Florida man Donovan Faison was arrested and charged with 2 felony counts of homicide for the killing of his pregnant girlfriend. On November the 11th of 2022, an officer patrolling the area of Coastline Park in Sanford found 19-year-old Kaylin Fingo dead in the driver's seat of her car. The woman had suffered a fatal gunshot wound. The investigation revealed that in the weeks leading up to the shooting, Fingo and 21-year-old Faison had argued about her pregnancy. Faison wanted his girlfriend to have an abortion and she refused to do so. A 10-month-long investigation carried out by local law enforcement pointed to the argument as a pivotal moment and the likeliest motive for the shooting. The police determined that, angered by her refusal, Faison executed Fingo in cold blood. The teenager was survived by a young son. Sanford Police Chief Cecil Smith expressed his frustration over the length of time it had taken to solve the case and spoke to a media outlet about Faison's arrest in reference to Fingo, saying that it doesn't bring her back, but at least she will have the justice she deserves. Number 9. Michael Petch. In February of 2005, British woman Claire Burnell from Kent went on 3 dates with Czech-born man Michael Petch. They'd met while Burnell worked at the cosmetics counter at a Harvey Nichols store in Knightsbridge, London, where Petch was a security guard. The 22-year-old told her mother that red flags had begun appearing in the relationship and that she felt suffocated when Petch expressed his love for her. After they'd gone out for less than a month, the man was also controlling and wanted Burnell to only spend time with him, not her friends or family. The latter ended things, but Petch started stalking and harassing her in the aftermath. He would show up at her home and at the platform from where she took the train. In addition to harassing her at work, Petch would send Burnell dozens of messages, some of which turned to threats when his feelings for her weren't reciprocated. On March the 30th of 2005, he boarded the train with Burnell at London Bridge and approached her aggressively. When she claimed she'd report him to the police, he threatened to kill her. The constant harassment led to Burnell struggling to sleep, and to a deterioration of her overall health. She reported Petch to the police and he was arrested but then released without charge, with one of the conditions being that he ceased contact in Burnell. 2 days later, he went to the woman's home in Dulwich, southeast London, and was consequently arrested for harassment. He spent several days at the high-security Belmarsh prison. In late August of 2005, Burnell was waiting to give evidence in the stalking case, but Petch changed his plea to guilty and was bailed out while awaiting sentencing. Roughly 2 weeks later, on the evening of September the 13th, he walked into the Harvey Nichols store while high on cocaine and with a pistol in hand. He approached the counter where Burnell was getting ready to finish her workday. Her back was turned to him. Petch shot her once in the back of the head and 3 times in the face after she'd collapsed. The police arrived to find both Burnell and her killer dead at the scene. Number 8. Justin Arthur Ray Davis. For about a month leading up to early April of 2022, Oklahoma man Justin Arthur Ray Davis stalked an unnamed Tulsa woman after resigning from their mutual workplace. Davis's campaign of harassment reportedly involved showing up to the woman's home to leave candy and food on her doorstep. On April the 2nd, the victim and her husband were about to leave their Tulsa apartment when they spotted Davis sitting in a truck nearby. He got out of the vehicle holding a shotgun, at which point the couple retreated inside their apartment. Davis fired a shot through their front door, which hit the woman's husband in the hand. Davis then burst into the home and grabbed the woman, dragging her down the stairs and assaulting her in the process. The husband intervened, but Davis aimed the shotgun at him, threatening to open fire if the woman didn't get in his truck and leave with him. He emphasized his intentions by shooting twice in the air. During the chaotic scene, the couple's neighbors alerted law enforcement and they arrived at the scene, prompting Davis to speed off without the victim. A chase ensued, but Davis eventually crashed his car while attempting to take an off-ramp on the I-44. He suffered injuries to his face in the collision. He was taken to a hospital and then to a Tulsa County jail with his mugshot showing him with a bloody face. He was charged with kidnapping, shooting with intent to kill, and first-degree burglary. Number 7. Marvin Magalin. In 2016, Marvin Magalin drove twice to the home of reality star and business mogul Kylie Jenner in Calabasas, California. Magalin, at the time in his mid-20s, told the security guards that he was there to see Jenner and was reported to have attempted driving through a security gate. Following his arrest, he pleaded no contest to vandalism and was released on probation after spending 10 days in the county jail. Magalin was reported as being a schizophrenia sufferer who was delusional about being in a relationship with Jenner. After being refused access to her, he suffered further delusional episodes in which Jenner told him that someone was trying to steal his life, and the only way to stop them was to take someone else's. At around 2 a.m. on October the 27th of 2016, Magalin fatally stabbed 52-year-old homeless man on a side Tavita as he slept behind a restaurant. On January the 27th of 2017, again at around 2 a.m., he took the life of homeless man Sabah Al-Saad, aged 49, while he was sleeping on a bus bench. Magalin surrendered to Anaheim law enforcement in July and confessed to killing Al-Saad before he was tied to the previous killing via DNA evidence. That same month, while jailed and awaiting trial, Magalin attacked his cellmate, 27-year-old Daniel Pham. The man had been incarcerated on a joyriding conviction and was due to be released. Jail surveillance footage showed Magalin charging Pham from behind, placing him in a chokehold and dragging him away. The man's lifeless body was subsequently found covered with a sheet on a bed in their cell. Magalin was reported to have shown no emotion during a court appearance in the fall of 2022, when a judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms in prison, plus an additional 15 years to life for the 3 murders. Number 6. Brendan Rowan Davis. On July the 30th of 2019, friends Will Valander and Brendan Rowan Davis spent the night drinking vodka at the home of 27-year-old Kelly Ann Case in Gosport, Hampshire, England. At one point during the meetup, Rowan Davis, who had learning difficulties and an IQ of 55, told Case that he liked her, to which she reportedly reacted by laughing at him. Valander and Case then went upstairs and had intercourse, unaware that Rowan Davis was filming them on his cell phone. through a gap in the door. The two men eventually left, but Rowan Davis returned to the home and launched a vicious attack on Case. He bound the woman with cable ties and tortured her for nearly an hour before he slit her throat. It was later determined that the injuries had been inflicted in a coercive manner, so that the victim would do what she was being told by Rowan Davis. The attack was believed to have been driven by his sadistic personal gratification. Rowan Davis set the woman's house ablaze before leaving, and her naked body was found by responding firefighters. The killer was tied to the scene by DNA found on one of the cable ties and a sample recovered from the victim's body. He was also spotted burning various items in the killing's aftermath, including a pair of underwear he'd taken from Case's home. Rowan Davis was found guilty of murder in 2020 and jailed for life with a minimum of 30 years served. Speaking of the victim, the sentencing judge addressed Rowan Davis to say she was vulnerable and defenseless. She was completely at your mercy and you showed her none. Number 5. Jodie Weston. In the fall of 2019, UK model Jodie Weston spoke to the media about her worst Tinder dating experience with a man whom she claimed wouldn't take no for an answer. He reportedly showed up to her apartment in Canary Wharf, London, and tried to give her a Chihuahua puppy as a gift. Weston reported that the man looked like the devil had taken over his soul and stormed off when she refused his gift. A few days later, she found him waiting for her outside her apartment building. The 26-year-old, who'd made appearances on Channel 5's Rich Kids Go Skint and the BBC's Eating with My Ex, said she remained in contact with him because she was concerned for the dog's well-being. He tried to see her, but she eventually told him she would be visiting family in Derbyshire as an excuse to create some distance. On the morning of the planned trip, however, Weston was again met by her Tinder suitor at the entrance into her building. The man awkwardly tagged along on the family trip, which proved disastrous, as during their days together, he'd made a poor impression on her family, most notably by asking her stepfather to adopt him. Within a few weeks of their return to London, Weston learned that the Chihuahua had died, which she suspected was because the man had been feeding it a diet of Twiglets and Rubicon mango juice. She tried to cut things off permanently, but the date sent her a giant teddy bear and showed up at her apartment building. He reportedly claimed that he'd called the police to get the stuffed animal back if Weston wouldn't agree to rekindle their romance. The situation ended with the man being escorted off the premises and Weston keeping the teddy bear. Number 4. Mohammed Arslan. Mohammed Arslan and Hina Bashir grew up in the same village in the Faisalabad district of Pakistan. Arslan, who was 6 years older than Bashir, became infatuated with her when he was in his teens. He befriended the preteen via text messages, later telling her, "How wonderful it is that I have found my princess in the house right next to mine." Bashir repeatedly rejected his advances and eventually moved to the UK in November of 2021 to study at Coventry University's London campus. Fueled by his obsession with the young woman, Arslan gave up his job as the manager of a pharmacy and followed her to England. Having already earned a degree in maths and quantum physics from the University of Faisalabad, he enrolled for a master's degree at the University of Essex. In spite of 21-year-old Bashir being in a relationship with another man, Arslan told everyone that she was his fiancée and would constantly message her professing his love. He made collages of her on his phone and edited photos of them together inside love hearts. On the evening of July the 11th of 2022, Bashir and two female companions went to an apartment that Arslan shared with a friend in Ilford, East London. Bashir wanted to pick up some belongings she'd temporarily stored with Arslan upon moving house. When Bashir didn't come out, her friends left without her. The young woman was never seen alive again. Arslan overpowered her at the apartment and forced a floral patterned COVID-19 mask down her throat, which resulted in Bashir succumbing to asphyxiation. Arslan stored her body in a suitcase and held it there overnight in the bedroom he shared with his housemate. The following day, he took a taxi to an industrial estate by the M25 near Upminster and hid the suitcase in some undergrowth next to the side of the road, where it was discovered a few days later. Arslan was interviewed by the police and initially claimed that Bashir had left his home unharmed, but the evidence against him soon became overwhelming. Matching floral face masks to the one found in Bashir's mouth were discovered in the man's home. Her blood was present on his bed. CCTV had captured him dragging the suitcase, and the taxi driver confirmed that he'd taken him to the industrial area. His DNA was found on the suitcase handle, and investigators recovered soil matching that from the dump site from his shoes. The man's obsession and imaginary relationship with Bashir was evident from photos found on his phone. Austine eventually changed his story and claimed that he'd accidentally killed Bashir while trying to quiet her down during an argument. On the first day of his trial in 2023, he admitted manslaughter but denied murder and perverting the course of justice. However, he was found guilty of the latter charges and sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years. Number 3. Ramen Koda Karam Rizai. In late 2022, Ramen Koda Karam Rizai, a long-haul truck driver from Texas, befriended Washington-based podcaster Soraya Sadagai in an audio chat room on the Clubhouse app. They met in person in the summer of 2022, and the man subsequently became obsessed with Sadagai. There was no indication that they were dating, even though Koda Karam Rizai told his ex-wife about Sadagai, claiming they were in a relationship. He later revealed to the woman that Sadagai had broken up with him against his wishes. In the fall of 2022, Koda Karam Rizai started harassing Sadagai through relentless phone calls and messages. The 33-year-old was married to Mohammed Milad Naziri, aged 35, but Koda Karam Rizai reportedly didn't believe she was married and showed up to her home with gifts. Sadagai reported the stalker to the police in December of 2022 and January of 2023, but his obsessive behavior only intensified. He threatened to burn the woman's house down. In one case, contacted her over 100 times in a single day and claimed that the only way he'd stop pursuing her was if he died. Sadagai formally filed for a protective no-contact order in early March of 2023, and the authorities tried to serve it to Koda Karam Rizai for about a week, but were unable to find him. His truck driving work made it difficult for law enforcement to pinpoint his exact location. In the early hours of March the 10th, Koda Karam Rizai drove to the home that Naziri and Sadagai shared in Redmond. He broke in through a bedroom window and gunned down the couple. The mother of one of the victims was able to flee the home and call 911. Officers from the Redmond Police Department arrived to find Naziri at the front door of the home shortly before he collapsed, became unresponsive and died at the scene. Inside the home, the police found the lifeless bodies of Koda Karam Rizai and Sadagai. Redmond Police Chief Daryl Lowe told media in a press conference held later in the day, "This is the absolute worst outcome for a stalking case." Number 2. John Ganobchik. On January the 26th of 2016, Christy McCains was returning to her car through a food court of the 4th Street Live entertainment complex in Louisville, Kentucky. She noticed that a man later identified as John Ganobchik had started following her. Surveillance captured Ganobchik as he stalked the woman and then entered the elevator with her. 25-year-old McCains would remember sensing that the man intended to harm her as he hadn't pressed any floor button. Neither of them looked at the other during the 13-second elevator ride. When the doors opened on the 6th level, McCains ran to her car and Ganobchik gave chase. The woman was only able to get one leg inside the vehicle before Ganobchik tackled her to the ground, slammed her head and tried to stab her with a rusty steak knife. Winter weather meant that McCains was wearing multiple layers and the blade didn't go through. Ganobchik pressed the knife against her torso, demanding all her money. He then threw McCains on the passenger seat of her vehicle and reportedly told her, "We're going." During the struggle, and as she was being held at knife point, the woman managed to push Ganobchik and create enough distance for her to reach into her purse. She pulled out a .32 caliber Beretta handgun, then shot Ganobchik in the neck and buttocks. McCains drove away to safety, but the attack had left her with a torn hamstring and needing extensive surgery on her hip. She was hailed as a self-defense hero. When news of the incident broke, Ganobchik was arrested and appeared in court with a breathing tube in his neck. He survived the shooting and pleaded guilty to robbery, attempted kidnapping, and criminal mischief. In 2017, he was sentenced to 15 years plus credit for time served. Number 1. Alexander Cornell. 27-year-old Alexander Cornell, a bartender at a restaurant in Ipswich, England, developed an obsession for his manager, an unnamed 39-year-old woman who'd repeatedly made it clear to him that she had no interest in a relationship with him. Cornell, nevertheless, gave her numerous gifts such as flowers, chocolates, underwear, a red dress and gym clothing. The woman changed gyms 3 times and Cornell showed up to each one in spite of the victim never telling him she'd left or rejoined elsewhere. He was also reported to have had her photo as the background of his Apple Watch. Cornell eventually developed jealousy and hatred towards the woman's partner, 41-year-old Blazej Piotrowski, a chef at a restaurant in Bury, St. Edmunds. On July the 4th of 2022, Cornell was captured on CCTV in his Ford Fiesta as he followed Piotrowski's vehicle to a multi-level parking lot. As Piotrowski bent down to look at his tires, Cornell stabbed him with a curved blade commonly known as a zombie knife. The victim turned around and saw Cornell holding the blade. The latter delivered several additional knife strikes before running away. He was arrested later that same day. Piotrowski recovered after suffering 3 stab wounds to his back and neck area, the largest of which was about 3 inches long and had caused muscle damage. After a trial lasting 6 days, Cornell was found guilty of attempted murder at Ipswich Crown Court on May the 23rd of 2023. He was subsequently given a 20-year prison sentence with an extended license period of 5 years. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be able to read minds or speak every language? Let us know in the comments section below.